Hi, this is Jeff with UTV Tech, and today we're going to be introducing you to our street legal kit. This will work on UTVs and ATVs, and it's really an easy kit to install. We're going to break it into three simple segments. We're going to show you how to first install the lights. After that, we're going to show you how to install the horn, and then after that, we're going to show you how to install the license plate bracket with the license plate light. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is how we're going to install the turn signal portion of this kit. And there's a couple things that we need to determine before we start the install. First of all, we need to determine where we're going to terminate the wiring connections. There's going to be one termination point on the switch for the turn signals on the dash, so you need to figure out on the dash where you're going to put the switch. The wires are going to come into that termination point, and then you're also going to have another run going from that switch to the battery, and so there'll be a second termination point at the battery. So you need to figure out where the switch is going to go and also where your battery is. Okay, here we're going to install the front LED turn signal, and you just need to look around on your particular UTV and decide where a nice flat surface is going to be that's going to look good. You do want it to be forward facing. On this particular unit we had a couple options, maybe down in here, up here would work as well, and we've decided we're going to mount it up here. And so one thing I would recommend is that you measure twice and only drill once, because extra holes in your $20,000 side-by-side don't necessarily look good. So I've kind of measured this out. I've decided where I want to put it. I've taken a Sharpie and I've marked that hole location, and so I've done my measuring. So now I'm going to go ahead and do my drilling. So I'm going to start off, we're going to need to actually drill a 3/4 inch hole, but on this one I'm going to start with a smaller bit so I can drill a pilot hole. Okay, there's my pilot hole. Now I'm going to come back in with my 3/4 inch bit and drill the actual hole the light will be mounted into. Okay, now I've got my 3/4 inch hole drilled. It's a really simple install from there. I just simply take this LED, there's a rubber grommet, and it's designed to just press right down into that hole. And once it's pressed in, it's going to lock in place. Okay, now we've got the LED light installed. What we need to now do is to terminate the wiring. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out where we're going to ground it. On these LED lights, something that's very important to know is the white wire is the ground wire and the black wire is the red or the hot lead. And so if you reverse those, the LED light will not work. And so remember, the white is the ground, the black is the hot. So the ground wires are always going to go to just a portion of the frame where you've got some metal. And I've located some metal tubing up in here, and I've actually pre-drilled a hole into there so that I can make a connection and just ground this LED wire right on the tube up here. The next thing I need to do is figure out where I'm going to run the wire, the red or hot wire, back to the battery. Okay, so we've got this front turn signal most of the way wired. We've connected the white, again, is the ground, and that one we connected a piece of black wire to that. We've screwed a screw into the chassis, so we've got a nice ground for that. We've connected the red wire to the black, which is the hot lead for the LED light, and we've run that wire nice and tight up in the frame. We've used 3 different zip ties to kind of keep that wire up and away where it's going to be not able to get damaged, and water and mud and things like that won't be as likely to affect it. So we keep it tucked high and tight. We found a nice hole in the firewall where we could go through, so we didn't even have to drill a hole there. And that wire is now waiting inside the cab to be connected to the turn signal switch. Here we are at the back of the machine. We're ready to install the rear LED turn signal. There's a couple ways you could do it. We could drill a hole, again like we did on the front, but there's actually a little trick we like to use sometimes when we've got a light housing where there's room for a turn signal like this one has. We actually like to install this LED down right inside the light housing, and so it's a kind of a cleaner look, more of a professional installation. So take a look at yours. If you've got that, that's something you can do. And so if you want to do that, there's some nuts that are holding this light on from the back side. I've removed those. So you can take the light pot out, and here is where the stop light goes that comes with the stock machine. Here is where I've drilled a hole already to install this LED turn signal. So this hole is not there, but I've already drilled it, and this again is a 3/4 inch hole. Instead of pushing the light into the hole, though, however, we're going to be installing this a little bit differently. We've actually got to insert the light in and then pull it back through. Okay, so there's a little trick when you're going to install this LED light from the back side, like we're going to do in this light housing, but it's not hard, so let me show you how to do it. First, you're going to take the LED light, and there's a rubber grommet. You're going to separate that rubber grommet from the LED light, like so, but still leave it on the wiring harness. Then we're going to put this LED light down in the hole, and then we're going to take the grommet, and we're just going to kind of work it so that it fits down in that hole like so. And so the LED light is down in there, and the grommet is actually in the hole. And then I'm just going to pull on this wiring harness, pull it back up, and that light is now installed securely in the light housing. Okay, now it's time to recap our install to this point. First of all, we've installed the rear LED turn signal, and in this case we did it in the light housing, and then we grounded that to the chassis. We've got the hot lead from this LED turn signal running up to the front of the machine and then back through the firewall so we can connect it to our turn signal switch. A couple things to remind you of. You want to make sure that both those leads underneath are tucked up tight and high and away so they don't get damaged with mud or snow or other things or debris underneath the machine. So you want to tuck them up tight, zip tie them to the frame. And then on each model it's a little different, so you're going to want to try to find a good route where that wire can run up to the front of the machine so you can hook it to your turn signal switch. So in this case, we were able to just take a few screws out in this lower plastic panel and then tuck the wire up behind it. It was super easy, and then we're able to continue it up to the front. And again, that lead wire, the hot lead, we were able to kind of bring it up through and then bring it through a hole that was already drilled in the firewall. We did the same thing with the front LED turn signal. Again, we tied it up tight to the frame, grounded it, and ran that through. So we've got those two wires, hot leads, inside the cab right now, ready to be hooked onto the turn signal switch. Okay, so here's a quick recap of what we've done so far with our wiring. It's a pretty simple circuit. We've got three lights. We've got the rear turn signal, which is the red color. We've got the front turn signal, which is amber, and we have the turn signal indicator, which will be mounted next to the turn signal switch, so you'll be able to tell when the turn signals are actually on or off. So we've got three lights, we've got three grounds, and remember that the white wires on these LEDs are the grounds, and those will go to the chassis. And then we've got three hot leads coming from these lights, and those three hot leads go into the switch, and then the switch has one hot lead going from that to the flasher. The flasher is what will enable those lights to actually flash instead of just staying on continuously. And then from that flasher, there is, once the current goes through there is another hot lead coming out, and this is what is going to go to the battery. And the battery has a fusible link, and it uses a 5-amp fuse that's installed here once the installation is complete. And then one last ground from the flasher to the chassis somewhere near where this is mounted. And you're going to repeat this section here for the other side, and once you've got those wired up and completed, your install will be finished. Alright, the first thing we've got to determine is where we're going to put the blinker switch, and then there also is two turn signal indicators which will be necessary to make it pass the Department of Motor Vehicles inspection in most states. And so we've got to install these, and there's a lot of areas on the dash, and it's kind of personal preference. Some things to consider are, this area by the steering wheel is certainly a place you could put it. It'll be harder to reach around and harder to see potentially. One of the areas we looked at on this dash was possibly putting it down here, but we felt like if things were plugged into this power outlet or you're going for these other switches, there might be some interferences. And so the location we've determined to mount this on this particular model is right here. So we're going to mount the switch here in the middle, and then we're going to put the indicator lights on either side. And then later on there is one more switch we'll install, which will be the horn button, and we're going to put the horn button right here. Okay, we're in the final stretch of our installation. we're ready to mount the turn signal switch and the turn signal indicators. A couple things to consider as to where you would mount this, because each UTV is going to be different. You want to make sure that it's easy to see for the driver, it's easy to reach for the driver, and you want to also make sure that it doesn't interfere with any of the other controls, such as the lights or the four-wheel drive system on this particular UTV. So in this installation, we've decided to put those indicators and switches right here. Another trick that we've done is we've also placed a piece of tape and we've measured it out so that we can make sure we have a precise holes so that they're going to look good and it's going to be a professional looking install. This tape will also help if you've got a painted dash like this one to keep the paint from chipping as you drill through it. So it'll be a nice clean and professional install. Okay, so for the center switch, you're going to use a 1/2 inch drill bit to drill the center hole. And then the turn signal indicators will be placed on either side of that switch. And those are going to use a 5/16 drill bit to drill those holes. Okay, so here we have our finished installation. We've got our turn signal switch and our turn signal indicators installed. Something that is helpful is the turn signal switch. It's easier to attach the wires to the switch before you install that in the dash. And so it's okay to terminate those and screw those on. And then you can then push the switch through the hole in the dash and then you screw a nut on it from the front side. And so that's the easiest way to do that. Now these turn signal indicator lights are actually installed the opposite way. They actually need to be installed from the front side and pushed through the hole. And so you won't want to terminate those wires until you've already pushed those through the hole. And then also the flasher is the best place. You can really put it anywhere in the positive connection, but we think the best place to put that flasher is actually somewhere that'll be up under the dash because it's a little more protected and a little more weatherproof so you don't get as much water on it. And so that flasher we've installed is actually mounted just back here under the dash. And then once the switch is installed, you're going to have one more wire run from the switch down to the battery. So here we can see the battery is located under the front driver's seat, and so we're going to be looking where we can run a wire from our switch down to the battery. And I can show you how it works. With that flasher in line, we get a nice intermittent signal, and that's what your final installation will look like. Okay, so now we're ready to mount the horn. There's a couple things to keep in mind when you're considering where to place the horn. You want to try to get towards the front of the vehicle if possible. The other thing you want to try to do is get it in a protected area. So for my installation, I'm going to put it just underneath the hood here where it's not going to get a lot of dirt and mud and water on it. And this is the opening or the bell of the horn, and if you get a lot of debris in there, then it can affect the performance and the sound of the horn. The other thing to consider for the horn is to mount it actually that opening facing downwards. So if you do get any mud or dirt or water, it'll tend to drain out and won't stick down in the horn. This is the mounting strap, so I'm just going to try to find a place on the metal chassis if I can to place this. It's better to mount it on metal than plastic. That'll give you a longer term, a more solid connection. And then I've got this chassis ground, so I'm going to find a place to screw the ground to the chassis. And then this end is going to thread through the firewall into the horn button. Okay, now we're ready to install the horn, and we've got the basic components laid out. We've got our horn, we've got a ground which will go to the chassis, we've got a positive lead which will go into the cab of the UTV, we've just got our button here which will be the horn button, and then from that horn button we come off that with another positive lead, and then we go down to a fusible connector, and then this will go to the battery. And that's basically it. Simple circuit. Okay, the final step in our installation is we're going to install our license plate bracket with this lighted LED so that the license plate is illuminated at night. We've got to insert this LED into the license plate bracket. There's a little nut here that you can screw down on it. One note, this is an aluminum body, and so you don't want to tighten this down too much or it could actually break and deform the aluminum body. So just make sure it's snug but not too tight. And then it's pretty easy. We've got a negative lead here which is going to go to the ground on the chassis. And we've got a positive lead here. Now, This positive lead is going to actually go to one of the tail lights, and when the tail lights are on, when your headlights are on, you're going to want this LED to be illuminated to light up your license plate. So you just have to find one of the leads going into your tail light, the positive lead, and then you're going to want to put this T-tap connector on there to do it. And so what you do for this T-tap connector, you can see there's a little metal piece here with kind of a V. You simply place the wire kind of into that V, and then you clamp this over the top, take a pair of pliers like so, and once that clips and locks, then you've now got a solid electrical connection. The neat thing about this T-tap is now you're able to just take this connector supplied and you can plug it in, and you will now have your LED supplied with power. Okay, the final step in mounting our license plate bracket is we need to determine the best place to mount that on our particular side-by-side. And on these razors, there's not a lot of flat areas to mount, so I've determined I'm going to mount that just right in the center here on the back. To do that, you need to drill 3 holes. One is going to be a 1/2-inch hole in the center, and that's going to give this LED light housing a place to stick through. This isn't how the plate is mounted, that's simply to give it room so this back of the LED light bulb can have a place to sit. You're going to drill 2 other 1/4-inch holes, and those are going to be for the actual mounting bolts for the license plate bracket. Then it's easiest if you terminate the ground wire with a ring terminal so you can ground that to the frame. Then I've also terminated the positive lead with a blade that will plug into our T-connector, which has actually already been installed on the light, the rear light, so that when the lights are on, this LED will illuminate the license plate. Okay, so now we've got the UTV Tech Street Legal Kit fully installed. We've got left turn signals, we've got right turn signals installed, we have turn signal indicators on the dash, we have a horn, and we have a rear license plate which is illuminated with an LED light at night as well. And these are going to fulfill the basic requirements to make a UTV street legal in all states. However, many states will require additional things besides our street legal kit, such as mirrors and windshields and things like that, maybe liability insurance. And so what you need to do is just check on the internet, check with your local Department of Motor Vehicles, find out what additional items your UTV may need. Mirrors will most likely be a requirement. We recommend the UTV Tech breakaway mirrors. We've got those installed on here. And then what you need to do from there is install those additional items and then put your UTV on a trailer, take it down to your local Department of Motor Vehicles. They'll inspect it from there, and once it passes, they'll give you a license plate and you're good to go from that point.